Hello, friends. Just a quick thank you up top as we close out The Terror Season 1. As of the release date of this podcast episode, we will have had over 13,000 unique all-time downloads of the series. That's amazing. We couldn't have done that without listeners like David Wall, who brought to our attention an article in August 2023's issue of National Geographic, an article that I'm sure Nella will be referencing in her Patreon post to come, so go check those out. I hope you enjoyed this season and stay with us as we continue to watch old and new things. All right, on with the show. Season 5 of Binge O'Clock Podcast will be discussing The Terror, an AMC show based on the book of the same name. Although The Terror is a fictionalization of real events, the material depicts medical, survival, and supernatural horror, as well as racism, misogyny, gore, and violence. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, friends, and welcome to Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle Nga, and I've seen almost nothing.
I'm Nella, and I have become the final verse in Stan Rogers' Northwest Passage.
You're our final girl, Nella. You final girled it.
How then am I so different from the first men through this way? That's me.
But yes, welcome everybody. We hope you enjoyed this season. This is our, if you're new to BocPod, this is our sort of wrap-up episode where we like to sort of do our one more things. We like to talk about our favorite things that happened. Just generally try and sort of pick up some of the pieces as we bring this season to a close. And maybe we'll tease what's happening next, and maybe we won't. I don't know. You'll have to find out at the end of the episode.
Maybe we won't,
stay
because
tuned.
maybe we don't know. TBD.
Maybe we're going to be on a little vacation before we kick off everything again. But yeah, so The Terror Season 1 was great. Love that show.
And that's it. That's the podcast episode.
And that's it. Thanks, everybody. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones. No, I'm kidding. No, what is everyone's favorite? Well, episode is kind of hard, right? What's everyone's favorite, like, sort of event that happened in the show?
I can do, well, you know what?
I mean, if you have an episode, you have an episode, but like my brain jumbles them all together, so I don't exactly remember which events happened in which episodes.
I love all of the episodes dearly, and we've talked about this in some of the other podcast episodes about how they're all so well constructed and they all fit together. So I wouldn't call this my favorite episode necessarily, but when I was thinking back over the course of the show, I think that one of my favorite experiences was, I don't even remember the episode number because, see, I'm terrible at that sort of thing, but I feel like the episode where Sir John dies is the episode where everything went from like, not zero, because it was never at zero, but this shows 0 to like 1,000.
Yeah, everything revved up. Like, everything got turned up to 100.
Ramped up. Exactly. Like, Sir John is dead. His face is ripped off. This is the Toonbach. This is the monster. Like, I feel like that's when we finally got to see it, right?
Got like a real good look at it. Got like our first good look. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I think it really became like a horror show for me. Because prior to that, it was just like maybe horror, maybe spiritual, something we don't know.
Well, yeah.
And so I enjoyed that.
Like you're ripped, like especially when Franklin dies. Like Franklin, to me, like no one is ever safe, like from the moment the show starts, right? But in a way, you gravitate towards those places that you have designated as safe. And like Franklin embodies safety.
Yes.
So like as soon as Franklin's out of the picture, it's like, oh, now none of y'all are safe at all.
That's true, because everyone who had died prior to that, which I know wasn't that many people yet, were like people whose names I didn't even really know, or I like kind of knew who they were, but they weren't super relevant to the story. Like this is like season 1 of Game of Thrones stuff, right?
Right.
Like when what's his face dies.
Here's 20 million names.
Sean Bean.
Sean Bon. Sean Bon is dead.
Exactly. And you're like, oh, plot armor doesn't exist. I understand now, right? Except that we know that later in that show, plot armor does in fact very much exist. But
I think plot armor exists depending on the writer in the writer's room at the time.
Yes, exactly.
Show. But we're getting off topic.
But at the time, when we were watching season 1, it was like, or, obviously I didn't read the books, but I think that was some people's book experience too.
I think so. I think you could count it up there. But yeah, it's, it's this thing where like you think this is the hero that's going to save everybody. Yes, and it's like, no, exactly. In fact, this is one of the first main, like trigger warning, main character death moments. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, yeah. Awesome pull.
Some like good backstory teasers, right?
Yeah.
Really fantastic. My brain is so dead. By the way, listeners, I apologize. I will be remembering precisely 1, maybe 2 names.
Yeah, when we're filming this Danielle's
podcast episode.
Danielle's
I'll fill it in.
Her work schedule has decided to turn upside down on her because not only, being in education suddenly dropped into the summer, but she can't be content with having a summer off. She has to work.
Nope.
So
gotta work. Here we are. What's his face who we love? Fitzjames. Like this I think this was also the episode where like you all had assured me that I would like Fitzjames, but this was the first episode where I saw it. And I was like, oh.
And it's like, what happens when the hero, is sort of taken away and his sidekick no longer has his coattails to hang on to,
And then he just got to be him and scream into a hole, Yeah.
I love the episode where love is such a hard thing to say about that. I love it where he dies, but it's true. I love it where Franklin dies. Is that your favorite death? Well, actually, we'll get to favorite death. We can hold on that. It's okay if it's the same answer.
I want to know what your answer is for both of you, the royal you. Your answer is for favorite moments.
Yeah.
/ episode.
I think I really like the masquerade that they put on.
The carnival.
Yeah,
the carnival.
The carnival
I mean, like,
episode.
I don't know about, it's hard to pick favorite moment because so much of this show is so well written and so well shot. And like, that first, like the first death as they're passing over the ice pack, as they're passing over the pack, and we get to see the shaman in this fever dream of the sailor is also one of those moments which will like live with me for a very long time. Actually, probably that whole first episode. Like, I know how I talk about the show builds and it's really good. And by the last episode, like we have built these building blocks and nothing is more or less, it all comes to this peak. But man, that first episode is such a good baseline for the rest of the show. That's
true.
And yeah, Carnival. I think I answered twice. Sorry. But Carnival with like all, the spooky stuff. Even, I'm almost glad that they changed the stuff in the book, but I like how they still invoked it in that weird, like, poor Crozier is just getting over his DTs and he sees all this debauchery and does not know what to do with it. Like
followed immediately by the fire scene. Oh, man, the fire scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic episode.
Yeah.
Moment in an episode. All right, Nella, what is it?
How dare you make me choose between my babies like this?
I literally had 2 a second ago. If you need 3.
This is what we're going to spend the remainder of this podcast episode doing, like forcing you to choose between things.
Okay, look, I do agree that the first episode has some of the most fantastic hooks in it, right? Like, if I were somebody who actually did tattoos, the temptation to get the we are about to commit an act of hubris we may not survive is extraordinary. Like I would what a tattoo I would want. Like it's dumb, but I love it. And just the way it's delivered. God, this is hard because it's like there's so many scenes and bits, right? Like I adore the moment where Fitzjames confronts Crozier, like coming in for a fight and not realizing he is stepping into a completely different scenario, but he bullies through anyway because he's going to speak his mind. And that confrontation I absolutely adore. I just adore, I mean, all the actors have done such brilliant work with the characters and with the quiet parts and with the things that are not said. Such good work. I mean, truly you see these actors, all of them truly inhabiting, these characters and giving them such life. I love whenever the show gives a nod to the sort of myths or stories or the artifacts that we do know of. I love those Easter eggs that the show has done. I think it shows the great love and care that the showrunners had for the material and for the history itself.
Yeah, I really, just to that point, I love that the show takes this book that like felt like everybody seemed to read. Like obviously there are people who really love the book, and they were really also able to inject the realities of doing a show like this more than 10 years later. Or 10 year? 5 year? No.
I love the fact that the showrunners reached out to a blog that was going through the purpose of recreating the Terror based on plans and stuff and making a model reference. And they became a show consultant and they recreated the Terror, which is now like at a Romanian water park or something, like it's like
as
the set for the Terror is like at a water park now in Europe somewhere. And a part of me is like, well, I need to go.
Yeah, like one day, Nella. I guess you're going to Romania.
If it is even Romania. Don't quote me on that, but it's somewhere. I'm pretty sure it's somewhere in the Baltic. Maybe the Baltic instead of Romania. Again, don't quote me on this. But
it exists is the point. And maybe one day we'll go there.
But probably my favorite moment is Blanky finding the Northwest Passage, right?
Yeah.
Because in the search for the Franklin expedition, that gap was bridged. But, the Lord loved the Victorians. Like, the idea of this many men dying for nothing was just... They credited Franklin's expedition with having discovered that gap. How many ways white men have died foolishly in the name of exploration, and they still get the participation prize.
There's your next podcast idea.
I like history's participation prizes.
Oh my gosh. Wait, that would be so fun, actually.
But I love that scene with Blanky because, he... To give a character like that, and probably my favorite death too, right? Because to give a character like that reckoning, that ability to make the decision of I'm going to walk off and I'm going to do what I can to make my death matter. So give me some forks. And then to sit there, I mean, I sit there and I imagine what it must feel like to see the culmination of why you're about to die. Like there in the distance, like, and knowing that like there's no one that's gonna know, but
Yeah.
What a powerful feeling. Like I think about that and I just
and how beautifully
shivers down my
shot,
spine.
Yes,
just having him on this peak, looking out on, and props to the actor too for looking out on what must have been a green screen, and like just really selling it, and also how that episode ends. Once the Toonbuck is finally showing up is probably, oh man, I think that's in my top 3 deaths, probably.
What took you so fucking long?
Yeah. We may not have, well, I guess we'll probably have to swear jar that. We usually try not to swear jar the curses that we quote. But
that one is particularly
brazen.
I'm waggling my eyebrows at you. Like if it's a quote, we shouldn't have to swear jar it. I don't know. Probably we'll swear jar the F-bomb.
Probably. Oh man, if I had to pick a favorite death,
yes,
it would probably be. I hate to like, it's such a downer. But I think one of my favorite deaths, because of how complicated it is Jobson.
Oh, yeah.
You know, it's like you have the mixture of, like, you know, the actual, you know, what happens to the brain when you die and, like, you know, not fully being cognitive and aware of your surroundings, and, like, both not realizing that Crozier isn't even there, but thinking Crozier left him. And, you know, the hallucination of dragging yourself across this fine dinner table, you know, it's just, it was such a, I feel like that one felt the most like you were placed into Jobson's point of view, which in a weird, morbid curiosity way, I appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to lie, Joy. That was one of, like, the three that I was juggling in my head as one of my favorites as I was trying to decide. But in my head, that one was almost, and I get what you're saying, because the way that I would categorize it is almost like the one that I most, quote, enjoyed as a viewer. But not because any part of it was something that made me feel good, and not because any part of it is something that I liked, but because it was so well done.
Well, and
it's like going to,
right? Like,
it's like going to Archive of Your Own and finding every last, like, hurt, comfort, fic with the dead dove don't eat tag on it, and being like, nothing good will come of reading this, but I want it to hurt.
Yeah.
And I want it to hurt so good. And Jobson's death hurts so good.
Yeah. Yeah. It did.
I mean, old time listeners will know that Danielle and I love a hurt so good.
We do love a hurt so good.
We are hard fans.
So wait, what does that mean? If that can't be my favorite death, then I guess I'm going to go with the salty one. And I'm going to say Good Sir's Revenge. Good Sir's Revenge was pretty great. And see, I actually ranked that a little bit behind Jobson's, because I feel like it was more like, in theory, I enjoyed everything about it because of the lead up to it. And the fact that I knew somewhere in the back of my head that this was going to happen. And I spent the better part of an episode just waiting for the other shoe to fall. Like, I know that this guy is out for revenge. I know that he's going to find a way to hurt Hickey. I just don't know how it's going to happen. Yeah. And then we got that. We got
oh, it was so good.
The dousing of the poison, the drinking of it. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, all the pieces of Good Sir's death. As much as we didn't want to see him go, man, did he go in a way that we'd remember him.
Good Sir's Revenge. What else is on your list, Joy? Do you have, like, a list of questions?
I mean, a few of them just sort of have to do with, like, if there was anything that the two of you felt was, obviously the showrunners tried to keep as little problematic or strategic problematic things, right? Mm-hmm. Characters being racist is not problematic, but like portrayals of characters, et cetera, et cetera. I was just curious if either of you thought any of the pieces could have been, because it does deal with a lot of indigenous themes and, ultimately it's a bunch of British people making a thing. But, I think they did what they could. There isn't anything that jumps out too far at me. But, I also don't necessarily have the best barometer for that kind of thing. So I was just curious if you both thought that maybe there was something they could have done differently or something that rubbed you the wrong way, but not in a plot way. Much like the book had its weird, and thank goodness they changed several aspects of it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, from what I'm hearing, because as you know, I haven't read the book, but from what I'm hearing, this is a wild improvement on what we could have seen, right?
I mean, so I would agree with that.
In comparison, it's almost like, what do I even have to complain about, right? Like, look how much they've improved it. And at the same time, like, listen, I'm always going to be a fan or I'm always going to be a proponent of more Indigenous voices, right? The louder, the better, the more, the better. But at the same time, I am, maybe this isn't like I'm not a writer or anything, so take this with a grain of salt. I'm struggling to envision a way that those voices could have been amplified when telling this story. Because I think that is almost a different story, because it's like the flip side of what we're seeing on the screen. And the only way that my brain can envision it right now is if it were almost like a frame story, which we sort of got, right? But if it were more obvious that, if it were more obvious somehow that quite a bit of what we know is not just based on the artifacts that we've been able to find in the bodies and the this and the that, but also the stories of the Indigenous people, right? And the oral histories that have been passed down since that time. Like, it would have been cool if that had found a way into the story, but I have no sense of how I would accomplish that.
I mean, I feel like then you get the flip side of like, and then someone makes a horror movie from the Indigenous perspective of, and now there's a pack of white men starving to death in the middle of your landscape, and you're just like, do we help them? Do we approach them? I don't know. They're acting a little wild, and then that's the lead poisoning.
They're scaring off all of our game. That's what I mean. Like, it's a different story.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the story that this show was trying to tell.
That's fair. I would be really interested in seeing somebody, I mean, ideally an Indigenous writer, preferably from the area, obviously, but like seeing like the terror, but through the Indigenous eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and just, but again, there's always that like, there's a part of me that loves that we don't get a full, like we don't fully get a bead on the Indigenous people, and maybe that's the right way to handle it, right? Because, like, if you focus a little too hard, someone's going to say something incorrectly, and it's not going to be a good idea.
I think, one element that's so important to the history of the Franklin expedition is in the attempts to find the Franklin expedition, the ways that people downplayed, ignored, or even just straight up said that the Indigenous were lying about their
trying to discredit the
experiences.
accounts from the Indigenous people. Yeah.
And, like, we don't, I guess for this, I just don't see where you would, I mean, aside from the scene with like, and like, just let Charles Dickens be a heinous racist, with his like 18-year-old ingenue. Just let him be a awful racist. That's what they should have done. They should have included the scene of
more
Dickens being a dick, really.
More awful Charles Dickens.
They should have really just like really leaned in on like Jane rolling with this real awful person.
Like, make it clear to us who in history is a really terrible person.
I think that the show missed the opportunity of alluding to his awful, awful racist play more clearly. And not just through Fitzjames voicing one of his quotes that was from what he wrote. That's where you would then take the time to really showcase the racism and sense of superiority, and by gum, we're gonna find them, and like, how dare Dr. Hall claim that like they were committing cannibalism? They would never. But they were. Imagine that smash cut, of cannibalism, not our white men, and smash cut to like Hickey.
To the leg in the bucket.
Seriously, the leg in the bucket covered in blood with a plate.
But that's probably going to be a little too on the nose. So,
you want to smash cut to one of the other men eating men, not Hickey.
Right.
No, I think it's. I think you're right that they did what they could to try and bring those other accounts in. And I know we've talked about it throughout the show of like, you know, the piece we don't have of the, you know, in all those other Easter eggs of like indigenous finding like the desks and the papers and the, you know, just like strewn across the wilderness.
But see, it was like so Easter eggy. That's what I mean. Like, I almost want there to be a way for someone with absolutely no knowledge of the book or the history to watch this show and know, like, it is because of indigenous people that we know that, you know? And I don't think coming in at zero when it came to this show, there's no way that I could have picked up on that just from viewing the series.
Yeah.
Right? Like that was something I was led into because of like questions I asked with like, what's with the gold on the face? Right? And then Nella, you're like, well, let me tell you. And it's like, oh, it's actually this really interesting. They right? But it's not in there. It's not in there anywhere. And I'm like,
I mean, this is why I also appreciate that Nella twisted my arm, which really wasn't that difficult to like do this season, because I'm like, I will literally listen to my wife talk about the doomed Franklin expedition till the end of time. But like, you know, that's also why like a podcast, like, and there actually ended up being a podcast where they ask questions of the folks. I was going to ask Nella to talk about this a little bit because the fandom is like really in with the filmmakers.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, I mean, as we're recording this last episode, which isn't going to air for quite a while, there is a massive 5th year fandom anniversary that the showrunner, David Kajanik, is participating in. And he's answering pre-selected questions on Zoom about each episode. And when I tell you that the run times of the ones that have been released so far put our episodes to shame, like this is a hungry fandom and they are eating well. Kajanik is just like, come to my table. Eat deeply.
Come and I will feed you.
I got these notes. Like he is like sharing scripts and notes and stuff that, and it's like, very clearly, like, do not publish this anywhere. Do not share this. Like, it, like, all you have to do is email this link. You'll get the passcode for it. You can look at the stuff yourself. Don't ruin it for everyone else. And it's like a solemn, sacred, like, fraternity. Franklin aficionados and terrorites. Like, seriously.
What do they call themselves?
I mean,
the Cold Boys or something?
Oh, the Cold Boys fandom. Yeah. Yes. It's the Cold Boys fandom. Yes. And, you know, I even haven't had time to really delve into all of that juicy stuff either, unfortunately. But it's a real treat. I think there's very rarely you get a fandom that is that open and that giving, from the showrunners and from the artists themselves, from the actors are participating as well. Because like I think many of the actors also fell in love with the process and with the characters and with the depth of history and detail that the show offered. Like, going to your point, Danielle, of feeling like, you know, if you hadn't been here, I never would have picked up on that. And I think that's kind of just how learning about the Franklin expedition works.
Yeah.
Because look, there is a very definite list of books that get recommended first when you have an interest in the Franklin expedition, right? If you're like, what can I read about the Franklin expedition? Believe me, the first on the list is probably going to be like Ice Blink, right? But like these books, like these like books that are considered like start there, they're all older. And many of them, like the first versions, and some have had subsequent like updates, additional chapters added and updates and things like that. But many of them are old. One was first written in the 80s. You know, you have ones that are written in 2003, 2007, you know, well from before we found either ship.
Yep.
So you start there and you're starting with information that as you continue digging and you find new books and JSTOR articles and historical blogs, like, and then you start realizing, oh, the things that I thought was true because the first book told me it, turns out it's not. It wasn't true at all, actually.
Yeah.
So now I need to go back and rethink everything. And then you end up like me, where you have a document of over 28,000 words full of notes and links upon links upon links.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like I'm sitting here with so much more to learn about the Franklin expedition and so much to relearn and unlearn.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just like it's this show and the journey of trying to learn about the Franklin expedition, like to do that deep dive, is truly an example of the more you learn, the less you know. And my own understanding of everything has so constantly changed throughout this entire process. And I'm not done.
Yeah.
This podcast will be done. I'm not done.
Right, yeah.
I really thought doing this was going to scratch an itch, and it hasn't. It's only made it worse.
Well, I mean, that's what your Patreon
We've just
posts are
caused
for.
a rash to spread.
I mean, all right. So remember back, oh God, what episode was it? Episode 3?
Probably.
Something way back in the way back, right?
Yep.
And I was so excited to find the PBS Nova clip about the ice cores. And I was so jazzed about ice cores. But then I find later the researcher that they interviewed talking about, well, yeah, you know, the crew really kind of pushed me into making a definitive statement. And I wasn't comfortable with that because there is enough of a possible range in the dating of ice cores that it's possible but not definite that they were in a cold snap. And I was just like tearing my hair out when I read
You're
that.
like, wait a minute.
No. and then maybe the cans were fine, actually. And they were just a new technology that, when you have a new technology in this food, in this canning process, like they're just kind of, there's not as many of the basic essential nutrients you need, like zinc and stuff and vitamin C. Because back to Inuit oral history, like there's testament of some Natsilic groups actually finding and eating these caches of red cans. And from the best I can find at this moment, there's no and nobody else do that because we ate them and then we all were struck down, paralyzed, and died. There's not, the oral history is we found the cans and we ate them. They were pretty good. It's not like we ate the red cans and they were filled with death. So maybe the cans were fine.
Well, I mean, okay, that's fair. I mean, the nature of science, right? Because if you have a hypothesis and you can't disprove it doesn't necessarily mean it's true, right?
I am still waiting. I am still waiting for the lead experiment, okay? Because a couple of years ago, they were like, we're just going to go through Goldner's canning process. We're going to can 1, 5, 10-pound cans. We're going to do it the same way he did,
right?
Same recipes. We're going to do it. And then we're going to let them sit and think about what they've done. And then we're going to test them to see what the lead content in the cans is. And then we're going to see, was there a botulism? Is there are they safe to eat?
I mean, I'm also sitting here and not that this is even a thing because I'm just spitballing it right now as you're talking. But I don't know, cold can constrict and expand certain metals. Maybe the metal was just brittle and it didn't end up holding up its end of the bargain. But even the indigenous eating the cans, I'm yeah, but they're not only eating the cans. They're also eating
and also they're not relying only on the cans. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. That's not their only food source because
no, but I'm saying if it was something like botulism,
right.
Botulism would be
botulism you can't fix with diet. Yeah.
Right? And Ice Blink was very much on the botulism train, but maybe it wasn't, Right. But that was the big theory that Ice Blink, which again is one of the first books everyone recommends if you're going to go down this path. So, or even what we've uncovered about Fitzjames, which Dan Simon didn't have access to when he was writing.
Right.
He was relying on all the same books we all rely on when we first start this.
Yeah,
but we've had more books since.
And then that's why it's so beautiful in the show to have him make that confession to Crozier, right? Because that wasn't anywhere in the book. Because why would it be?
No, because we didn't exist.
I didn't know. I do love.
I didn't know about his awful father, who was a freaking ambassador in Brazil.
I just love the idea that he shows up with absolutely zero information about him, and they're just yeah, you could serve, no problem, whatever, it's fine. I mean, this
we
real
don't even
life
know
Mr.
the name
Darcy.
of the ship cat.
I know. Why didn't anybody write down the name of the ship cat?
Why didn't anyone let us know what the ship cat's name was? There were only 3 animals.
Yep.
It was the monkey, and that was Jacko. It was the dog, and that was Neptune. But we don't know the cat's name.
I know.
And I know someone on that ship gave that cat a name.
Or is it the scenario with all pets where it's like they have too many names? This cat has no name, but we all call it different names and it still responds to it. So maybe it is a cat of many names.
Or it's like one of those cats where everyone thinks the cat belongs to them, but in fact the cat is being fed by 5 different people and so has 5 different names.
You're right.
Anyway.
Well, I think it's actually time for like one more things, which I kind of have like a sappy one for the end of it. But do you all have any? And if you don't, that's also fine.
So you understand this is not a visual medium. So everyone listening, you're either just going to have to go to my Patreon, or I'll give them this image to post on Twitter or their own site. But I'm going to share a quick image with you both because I think it's pretty neat. So can you see this image?
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we'll share it on our Twitter so folks who are swinging by.
So
can
this
see.
image represents satellite images of the ice melt that happens around King William's Island. This, I believe, was the year 2014, and how small the window is where the areas of where, and I don't know if you can see my mouse, but like there would be
we can see it.
the Terror, and over here would be the Erebus.
Yeah,
right.
And how small the window is to get ships out there to do these excavations.
Wow.
At most, they have a 2 to 3 week window to work on the Erebus. And the Erebus is the one they're working on first. They're throwing everything at the Erebus because it's in only 36 feet of water. All right. So side note, I know this will be very old news by the time this gets posted, but on Tumblr, it was going around a poll about, because the Titan implosion just happened.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And there was going around on Tumblr a post about, so you can participate in an experimental submersible and go down to see the Erebus and Terror. Would you do it? And of course, now here's the thing. The entire fandom was like, I have watched all 10 episodes of The Terror and I know better.
Yep.
But all the tags, and I admit I also threw tags down, was just like, does not the same. The Erebus is in 36 feet of water. You put on a dry suit and you can go down there easily. You just have to be cognizant of how cold the water is. It's completely different. Rah, 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 rah.
But I also, and then it becomes, and based on this map you're showing us, maybe you get 2 weeks out of the year to actually do that.
And so you have to plan it very meticulously, be aware of the weather patterns, and hope you actually have an excavation season.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, like, even with like that map from 2014, the Erebus and Terror are also, like so many things in this world, at danger from climate change.
Yeah.
Because as the pack begins to diminish and the waters get warmer, the very things that keep them preserved, especially in such shallow water, is going to change. And there is a kind of a ticking time clock. They've already noted a lot of deterioration between when they found Everest at first to what they're seeing now.
Yeah.
So not great.
Which I don't like. I don't like it.
I don't know. I just really find underwater archaeology neat.
Yeah. What's my one more thing? Mine is quick, and then Joy, you can do yours. Because I feel like yours is going to be better. Because my one more thing isn't as much a one more thing as it is a final sentiment about this season of this show, which is to say that it is so rare for me to watch a season of TV where at the end of every episode, and certainly by the end of the season, my feedback is essentially no notes. Like, unless pressed, right? Like I had to think, I had to reach a little bit to answer your question earlier, which was the question about like, what is something that you would have done differently? And even then I was like maybe this, but I don't know, really, because this show
I meant to say when you were talking that like
this show
even
is
those
like
things.
this show is like near perfect.
Yeah.
I almost no notes. Like the plot, the way it's filmed, the writing, the acting, the friendships.
Even down to Crozier getting to be the final girl.
Yes. Almost everything about it. No notes.
No notes. No one more things, which are no one more things. It's perfect.
No one more thing.
She's perfect.
It's perfect. Go back, watch it again.
Yeah. No, highly recommend. I mean, with all the warnings that we have about the show in mind, and, the fact that it is horror, the fact that there is, some gore and some, survival cannibalism and some et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All the warnings I have at the beginning of the episodes. But like, man, is it really good. Like the cinematography is really good. The costumes are really good. The writing is phenomenal. The cast is just unusually talented, which is pretty close to my one more thing, which is just like, man, did they have like, there's like that magic moment where they just have all the, like all the stars align and you get like this perfect thing. And it's like, it's pretty close to perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, I also, on a personal note, from those of us at BocPod, I wanted to thank all of our listeners because this is the most listened to season. Even as we're recording this, which we've only released a couple episodes, this is like, the first few episodes of this season are like number 2, 3, 4 on our most downloaded episodes. So thanks, y'all.
Oh, go team.
That's awesome.
I love that. Does this mean more horror? Is that what they want?
I think
is this what the people want?
More between
horror?
You and I, as if she has more time for it, I think it means more Nella, but it's entirely dependent on my wife's schedule. See, people do want to listen to you go crazy about an archaeological disaster.
You're bringing me back for Master and Commander movie
Yes,
night.
no, of course.
Okay, we're doing Master and Commander because you need to bring me back for Master.
I mean, maybe that's our 100th episode.
Because then I can bring and let you in on all the Patrick O'Brien girly stuff that I love so much. Like, and then I could talk about the fandom there. That,
True.
I've been lurking in since high school. So.
Mm-hmm.
Very true. Very true.
And then we could talk about how you debauched my sloth, and then you'll finally understand that reference.
I feel like
I can't wait.
What's funny for me is even though I've seen it, I haven't seen it in such a long time that my brain is desperately reaching for it because it seems like the kind of quote I would have quoted over and over and over again, despite only seeing the movie like once. But it is not there. And I look forward to it returning when we do watch it. Maybe we'll throw it in as a movie night in the middle of this season.
Not an if.
I don't know.
You'll see.
We'll see.
I can't wait to explain.
But yeah, so we are, as far as our next show, we are still figuring that out because...
TBD.
Well, TBD. Because also, it's not that Danielle doesn't watch horror, but the second season of The Terror might actually have some of the things that Danielle does not want to watch.
Yeah,
So,
I'm a little nervous about that one. I don't know. I don't know if I'm going to say yes to that one this particular summer, but TBD.
Maybe not.
The other reason it's TBD, by the way, is that we've stayed on schedule when it comes to these recording sessions, and so we have many episodes in the can, which means that we don't have to make this decision right now.
You will after this episode airs, you'll probably get a little mini trailer with the update of what we'll be talking about next. But yeah, till then, thank you so much for joining us, Nella. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky and Mastodon and all those new places that we're trying to flee to from Twitter under Nellachronism. You can find me at Patreon under Nellachronism. You can find me on YouTube at Nella Explains a Thing. And BC, and I'm sure if you're lurking around the Cold Boys fandom, I'm probably there too. I haven't written anything yet for the fandom, and you'll never guess my screen name. But I don't know. I'm thinking about it. I've been reading some things, and I'm like, I think what this calls for is 2 cakes, and not just 1 cake. So,
indeed,
this is a 2 cake solution, especially for some AUs I've been kicking around. So
nice.
Anyway,
very nice. Also, it has been really interesting to listen to Nella try and read every single AO3 fanfic based in terror lore. Most of them happen to be AUs, which I'm a little disappointed by, but maybe that speaks to how good the original is.
Here's the thing. There's only so many, and believe me, they do them. Like there are many, but there really are only so many like cut scenes or
right.
like some die, some live, fix-its, and I've read practically all of them. But eventually, you feel the siren call of you feel the siren call of the coffee shop AU or
the high school AU. Or
it's an investment banking firm.
That's one she's reading recently, and I'm just like, how does that? I'm gonna wait until you finish it, and then you can tell me all about it.
No, I won't give spoilers on the podcast, but I'll tell you about it offline. Danielle, I told you about the House Moving Castle AU, right?
Oh yeah. You did.
Yeah. Okay, good. Yeah.
That one's right up my alley.
There's the obligatory Pacific Rim with the drift compatibility. Mm-hmm. Personally, I'm like, we all know that I have theories. I already know. I'm gonna stop there.
Well, she has to stop there because who knows? Maybe she'll write her own AU. And then it'll be up on AO3 for everybody to read. Well, now I can't
write that AU because if the minute a second Pacific Rim AU drops, everyone's going to be like, oh, that was Nella.
No, that was
Nella
her.
Finally did it.
Oh, no, someone would read it.
The third or fourth. Oh, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there.
I think we did it.
All right,
everyone. On that note of see you soon, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can answer the question, what is your favorite episode of Season 1, The Terror? You can also email us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com. And don't forget, we have a Patreon. Find us at patreon.com/BocPod.
That's right. And tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the live lobsters in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.